infrastructure and across capital. So the way I will conduct this session is that I will first ask a generic overall macro question from each of the speakers, and I request everybody to be very short in their answers because we have many questions. I'd like to cover all the aspects of this. Then I will come to the talent theme, how we democratize talent. Then I'll come to the data theme. Then I'll come to the infrastructure theme. And finally, I'll come to the capital theme. So we'll try to cover all aspects of the AI ecosystem in a short 25 minutes conversation. So starting the first session, a macro session, and it comes from, and starting with you. As AI capabilities are expanding globally, how can governments and industry work together that, the access to the resources, they grow responsibly with security and trust, which are built in from the design itself? How do you do that you mix growth and discipline and safety in a same framework? How do you do that?
I love this question. It's probably one that we can talk about for quite a period of time, but there's a great red clock in the back, and we want to move on that. So I think the key really is, in technology and in security, we talk about roots of trust. If something is built trust from the bottom up, then each layer then builds on that same joint trust. And that's really important from an AI perspective, because in order for AI to be truly transformative, it has to touch different parts of our lives, move at machine speed. So people need to know, what data was a model trained on? Is it data that they trust? What decisions is a model making? What is that? What are the left and right boundaries of what those decisions are? And finally, particularly when we tie to agents, are those agents' identities rooted in role-based access controls and in the kinds of things that work from there? So one of the reasons I love coming to India, and I find it so exciting, is in many ways India has built the foundation for your question, right? When you think about Aadhaar, a national digital identity system, when you think about DPI, a system that allows the API for financial transactions, and then when you build upon that with national data like healthcare data that the government has actually curated, you have the pieces of trust applications, and what's the most important? AI that touches live. Because chatbots are very interesting, but what's really interesting is healthcare in a rural village, Bashini, that allows real-time language translation. So somebody whose native language is not English can hear an advanced lecture in STEM and understand it real-time. Fast enough?
Fantastic, fascinating. So Gokul, that was the strategy point of view. As a practitioner of technology who dirty their hand in actually coding technology, I'd like to ask from you, from a compute and engineering standpoint, what advances are making AI more accessible today than what was possible even 2 years back?
Starts off with what you want to build for what user experience and what workload, because you don't want to start building your technology and then saying go use it, because then you would end up having the same kind of car running on the road. Today you find, the variety of cars, different engine, different sizes, each one using it for different needs. Some for a vacation, some to go into work, some for some other reasons. So heterogeneous compute is one of the key capabilities. So you want to start with what workload, what user experience. Keep that in mind as your architecture. And what I mean by heterogeneous compute is making sure that you can find a way to run it in the most affordable compute capability with the right performance and the right power efficiency. So in this case, it's XPU, as in CPU, GPU, and NPU, depending on where you're deploying it. If it's all on the training and the data center side, it's a different kind of a size and architecture. If it's an edge, it's something else, and if it's at the hands of the end user, it's something else. That's how we look at it. Start with workloads, start with user experience, then figure out what kind of compute you want to give in a scalable, affordable manner with open ecosystem.
Fantastic, thank you. Kalyan, you are sitting in the mid of the AI in action, AI execution, and I'm sure you are dealing with hundreds and thousands of customers in India and abroad. And the often quoted remark is, in B2B space, it is all pilots and POCs and not AI in production. So my question straight, Kalyan, to you is, what is that tipping point when enterprise decides that it's enough of pilot now, I have to go into production now? What is that tipping point an enterprise is looking forward to before everything starts scaling up?
We start with a very interesting quote someone told me many decades back. God made world in 7 days because he had no installed base. And enterprises sit in a very interesting point, especially in the B2B. We have, for the last 30 years, only added incremental systems, and in a very crude way, I can say we have shoved the dirt under the carpet. So kept on putting carpets, kept on this thing. 15 years back, everyone said, oh, the mainframe will not exist. I think 2% increase in systems hardware on mainframes is an interesting data point, saying that people are not finding better TCO on other systems. They're still sticking to this thing because the applications, the data is being put into significant depth. The tipping point, in my opinion, is we never built systems with data-first approach. We always built applications, workflows, processes, and the data was hidden behind those systems. The fundamentals of AI is that it needs access to data, independence of data, so data products, having better metadata, definition of data, and then ability to get access to LLMs or SLMs or agents to access them. The reason they struggle to scale is your data stewardship. How do you provide access to data? It's very complex. You can't, to access an employee data, you might think it's just go and query by employee ID. There's so much layers which people have built in the systems. That's where I think orchestration, process intelligence, and then finding the balance between deterministic workflows and probabilistic, that's the trick in B2B. And the tipping point, it's not to say AI is not working, but it's your data which is not feeding the AI to make it work.
I think sometimes these are the hidden layers we all miss. We all are talking about models and agents, but we don't think the raw element of that is data. It's all there, but it's accessible, it's available in the right way, right format. I think Kalyan is giving the right tip to all of us. So let's start with our first theme-specific round, and that is on talent. How do we democratize talent in this whole AI ecosystem? So my question now to Gokul, first to you. What are the practical approaches which will help organizations to expand AI capability beyond some very small specialized team? Every organization we have few people who have figured out how to deal with data, how to create models, how to fine-tune models, how to put them into production, but majority of the people are just consumers of a ChatGPT. So how do you actually create that capability in the organizations that it is widespread in the organization and not just limited to few people?
This is an excellent point because it's easier to find AI skill set when you're coming fresh from college because they don't have to unlearn anything. But if you're already in the industry and you work for many years, there is a certain amount of reinventing that has to happen. One of the things that we actively look at is, at least in the semiconductor space, being a chip designers, we try to look at AI in engineering. If you're building products for AI, if you're doing compute and processors, we ourselves have to look at what it means to use it in engineering those products. Obviously, it's not an easy thing and it's not available yet and it's an evolving space. But more importantly, like you said, rather than it in staying in a pocket through an elitist, our goal is to make sure for each function, each role, and each capability in some way are having an exoskeleton of sorts. They walk into the campus when they badge in, they actually feel like they've brought in another assistant with them for what they're doing. And that is primarily by having them build or use an AI tool that will make their jobs faster, better, improved, either its efficiency or its quality. And when you have that, you have time to innovate. So that's another aspect that we've been looking at where everybody is actually having some kind of an exoskeleton capability with their AI assistant based on whatever role or function that they're doing.
And next question to you. We all are all charged up on the prospect of AI will change our lives, right? And we know AI can genuinely change our lives across the spectrum, in every field of life. But at the same time, because you are putting your data into a machine and machine become intelligent and giving results, we also have a lot of inherent, I would say, distrust. What is this black box which is giving answers? What type of data has gone into this? Is my data getting misused? So the question is, for a widespread adoption of AI, some of the fundamental questions will be transparency, explainability, and I think it will be not a matter of only a technology, it will always be a matter of regulation, also regulation and technology working together. So according to you, what all these elements of technology, regulation, observability, explainability are required, which will help build a wider confidence in AI adoption across the world, in India, everywhere? What's your take on this?
So humans don't trust black boxes, and we shouldn't, particularly for things that touch important parts of our lives. So I think you laid out exactly beautifully the components of the solution, right? One part is transparency. What data is a model being trained on? Is that data to be trusted, right? When we think about AI in education, we know we don't want AI education things trained on social media because there's facts that we want our children trained on regarding history and culture, not just people's opinions, right? That's one good example. The second part truly is, to your point, understanding how the model arrived at the answer it did. So when we think about, for example, an AI model that's helping to identify how much purifier goes into a water system, right? There's been data over decades of what amount goes in after a flood, during a period of illness, right? And then there's norms of what there is. If a model is recommending something outside the norms, you're going to want even more understanding of why. And I think the final part of that is, exactly to your point, the ongoing training, so people feel like the model is also continuously adapting. The regulations are a really big piece of that, because when something's really important, the fundamental incentives of the private sector are advancement and innovation, not safety, security, and reliability. Regulation will help us do that. How we ensure it's not compliance checkbox, but rather really continuously evolving with benchmarks and continuously responsive to ongoing attempts to say, is the model safe? Has it been hacked? How do we know the results are okay will be needed?
Thank you. And so, Kalyan, next question to you. I think you coming from a software background are very, very familiar with this dichotomy which India faces. On one side, we say India has got the largest skill and talent pool in the world, but at the same time, we say we have the shortage of the skill talent. You know, we say the same thing in the same breath, you know, so many times. So, according to you, in this AI-driven world, how can industry and academia work hand to hand to really make the talent available in a widespread way so that we can really benefit from AI, you know, which it really deserves? So how do industry and academia work together?
So, see, if you really roll the clock back, we really were good at fulfilling demand. So if you look at the 90s, like India was always a demand fulfilling entity. So like when NIIT and AppTech, and they really created those stuff. Then when the big large IT services companies, they had to really build mini universities to really train people. I think Anne was pointing to the point that there's enough knowledge available now, correct? These systems have gathered, they have read enough. It's like you don't need to search for, they understand context. So I'll take a very simple example. We needed demand for coders, and so we built a lot of coders. There's a big difference between coding and engineers. Engineers have systems thinking. They look at problem solving. So you need to start to pivot the whole approach. Either you go deep or you go wide. So either you build skills which are more deeper, and that's where I think industry, academia, they'll have to start. You can't be teaching people programming languages which you're not going to use anyway. Your curriculum has to go through a complete rejig. So that's the first thing. Both industry and academia have to partner into that. The second is we have to start to pick skills which we never valued. Persistence, grit, critical thinking, problem solving, things which we never were so serious considering in the university. We were so single disciplinary. We have to become multidisciplinary. People have to start to adapt. And every skill can be augmented with computing skills. So you have a good mechanical engineer, they could start to adapt how they can apply AI. So I would say looking at someone with a computer science background to solve all problems versus using that plus skill, the dual skill is going to become very, very important. Then the third is learn, unlearn, and relearn is something which each individuals have to take it on their own. You can't expect government and enterprises and others to only solve the problem. People also have to take, and I think with the availability of MOOC and other aspects, there's enough available. I don't think we have an issue of content. It's about how people adapt and use it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move to the next theme now, which is the theme of data. I'm just hoping that I'm able to complete all the themes considering the time, but again, let's try to do as much as we can. So coming to the theme of data, and let me start with you. AI by nature means that you are creating a huge cluster of machines, GPUs, putting unlimited amount of data there, and the machine become intelligent, start giving data. So basically, you are concentrating data and resources in one place, and then you will be start serving the whole world. That is one part of AI. But the second part of AI is, because you are putting your critical confidential data, every country says, I want to be sovereign and completely self-governed and independent to this. This is the dichotomy again, right? So ultimately, it will require a collaboration between countries so that these capabilities of each country can be utilized and everybody is able to benefit from AI in a collaborative way. Considering that technology and these tools are being used more like weapons of geopolitical negotiations nowadays, according to you, how can countries collaborate meaningfully so that the benefit of AI actually reaches the masses and every country is able to bring their capability forward?
I think it's a really excellent question. And I think the key will need to be federated data learning, right? So if we think about drug discovery and the ability to generate proteins that are not known to nature, right, using models, ideally you want to be able to test those drugs or identify on pretty much rare cancers, for example, just picking an example, right, where you have people around the world where you want to bring together that data, but you also understand that health data, some of the most sensitive data a country has. It has to be protected, and it's very reasonable for countries to expect that data stays local. So in the United States, we did pilot approaches during our Department of Health and Human Services with others around the world to say, can we train models where data stays where it is? And that's possible. And I think it'll be particularly important for data loads that countries are sensitive about, either from a national security perspective or a privacy perspective. So make the tech work in order to ensure that we protect what's most important, which is the core essence of the sensitivity of that data.
Okay. Kalyan, what I will do is I'll combine two questions into one, and I'll cover the theme of data and infrastructure both. You touched upon the point of data already in your previous answer, but let me repeat. What are the foundational data architecture shifts are required for organizations to truly become AI ready? You touched upon that, but I would like you to talk about that again. And my second question relating to infrastructure is, ultimately you'll have to do lots of partnerships across the ecosystem with multiple people. How do that partnerships play a role in building a scalable AI infrastructure? So two questions in one, please.
Cool. The first one, just I want to summarize on 3 key points on data. You have to start to imagine data as a data product. So data as its own independent entity. So if you're an enterprise, start with data catalogs. Do metadata discovery. You can use techniques like knowledge graph to really understand how data is flowing within the enterprise. You think data flows the way you designed. Reality on the ground, the data flows very differently. And many a times that understanding of the data, and every time you want to centralize, it explodes. Yep. It goes to the edge. Yep. So centralization is a dream, but it's never going to happen in the reality. I can quote the former Intel CEO, and I was always a big fan of Pat, and he used to tell me about these 3 things: laws of physics, laws of economics, and laws of the land. And that really drives, if you look at the data play, sometimes just latency, you don't want data to be centralized. There is economics, cost, I think, and that's a big play. And the third is data sovereignty, residency. The second is lineage, governance, data tracking, data observability, because it's becoming very important. What you teach is how the system behaves. What you feed determines how the systems start to behave, and they learn. And there is hardly, I think there's some enough research people around here who will say it's very hard to explain how these systems work. Even the creators of the systems are not sure of how the interworkings of how these systems learn, because it's become so multi-layered neural networks. They are learning very differently. So hence it's very important that you look at the input and the output, and you keep looking at the veracity of what's happening. And the third is build for real world constraints. And that's good. On the infrastructure, the reason AI is not new, it's been there for 50 years. What's happened is access to hyperscale compute has created more data, which now you need more compute to process. It's a very interesting cycle which we are creating. And energy is going to be a big play. In your world, you're trying to solve this problem, right? But you think you're solving the problem, but every time you try to attack it, you realize that you've not even scratched the surface.
That's true.
So that's going to be the big place. And that's where I think pragmatic use. Please don't use LLMs as a search engine alternative. I'll tell you, people are now using this public language models, and you're going to burn like half a liter of kerosene for every query. Correct? You want to build small language models, you want to optimize infrastructure. So you cannot solve the infrastructure problem independent of the data problem. You have to think of them more holistically. So I would say we all need to become more judicious. So the FinOps discipline, which we had in cloud, needs to come in data and compute. They have to start to understand why am I using and what, and can I optimize?
Yeah. Fantastic, great insight. So Gokul, again, two questions to you, two into one. The theme of infrastructure, theme of data, and theme of capital all into one. My first question is, how important it is at a system level, AI system level, to bake trust and governance into the stack itself by design, right, even at the hardware level, right? You present hardware industry, so I'm asking how it is to be done at a hardware level itself. And my second question is, which I think globally is obviously the controversial question, how do we make sure the benefits of AI does not remain restricted to filling the pockets of few organizations only globally, rather the benefits of AI reaches the masses across the world? So two questions into one technical question, one controversial broad-based question, please.
Sure. Thanks. Were you saying that for the last? I mean, 3 in 1. So when you're looking at data, clearly all aspects that Kalyan mentioned totally holds good, and he talked about the security. So when we are actually architecting the processor, security is a security first mindset. You can't have security as a last checkpoint before you release your processor design. So when you have a security first mindset, some of the things that come into mind is, obviously the most cliche thing is to say, hey, protect my data, protect my model, make sure that doesn't get hacked. But it's also protect the user. So there is 3 aspects. So there is application isolation, so that you can give a trusted environment where the application can run. Then there is an isolation with more growing usage of AI, where virtual machines have to be in a trusted environment beyond just the application. Then the third part is, if I'm going to connect multiple compute processors, that connect has to also be secure. So there are technologies for that Intel has as SGX and TDX Connect. But going out of all the terminology, app isolation, virtual machine isolation, connecting different hardware pieces together, all of those have to be secure. And that doesn't end there. When you put all of them together, you start to get something more as a confidential computing or confidential AI. So that is, again, going back to summarize, security first mindset when you're actually architecting the chip has to come, rather than at the end as a checkbox. And obviously we've done that over the years, and it's not easily done. You have to have ethical hackers who are actually going to find these vulnerabilities ahead of time, and that's one of the reasons why Intel processors even today are the most secure, and we're able to actually find this and also share with the industry. The second part that you asked me was around how do you make sure that that this doesn't get, how do you democratize AI from a standpoint of a larger usage. One of the things that which we should also be very, despite all the challenges of how we got into this room and be sitting here, is the fact that the AI Impact Summit has brought one aspect is just the Indic language translation. Being able to take an English and can have that in all of our Indic languages. And if you have a student who wants to learn, and if majority of the content is in English, they're able to either translate as well as transcribe and make notes out of it in all of the languages, has actually broken that barrier. There are several themes in this AI Impact Summit. One of them is just the language barrier that's gone. Once that is gone, I think there is tremendous amount of opportunity where you've already gone a big step in terms of democratizing. The second one is just leapfrogging in those domains where technology has not really broken in. That equity hasn't come. It's still in certain pockets where we use technology, but not everywhere. Agriculture, micro-entrepreneur.
Yep.
Maybe even in education, as much as we say there is technology, there are still so many of these schools that can benefit from it. We're still talking about 245 million students in India. That's almost the population of the United States, right?
Yep.
That many students. But if you take the ratio of a PC to a student, every 100 student has only one. I'm not saying you need to have a PC, but a compute device is fundamental to learning. It doesn't matter whether you're in engineering or in any of your professional degrees, even for humanities. That's what the national education policy talks about. I think things like that are really going to make the capital democratization far more powerful than any infrastructure can do.
Thank you. I think we can go on and on. These are the subjects we can go anywhere, but I have been constantly being threatened from the side that I am taking too much of time. So we will have to end this great panel here. I am just hoping you all enjoyed the session and you have some takeaways from this panel. Thank you so much.
We do have a bonus as well. I would like you all to be seated because we have a very insightful keynote by Mr. Vishal Sikka, founder and CEO of Vinai. And I would like to invite him here because this is also part of the session. So it's a bonus for you all, actually. Another round of applause for us.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Kindly please take your seats. I request all the audience, and we are here for the keynote as well. And of course, we have another very insightful panel.
I just made a few remarks on you want to ask me?
So I'm going to ask you if you want
Just about
democratization of AI. So I have a few points in mind and I'll let me tell you while we are setting up. Some of the points are about computer infrastructure, democracy, right? Why should every compute power in India and how? And then data ownership. Can we have a bit of order? Thank you. And if everyone can sit down, then that helps. If you want to take the empty chair, go ahead, take it. Go ahead. We want to start. Go ahead. Thank you. Go ahead. I'll just quickly thank you everyone, and sorry we've sort of run into a massive huddle one after the other on the sessions. This session was supposed to start with the keynote with Mr. Sikka. The topic, as you all know, is democratization of AI. We've finished 75 years of this democracy, but when it comes to the pivotal moment of AI, the moot question is who owns AI? And there are many paths to AI. There's compute infrastructure, there's data modeling, there's copyright issues, there's even talent. So there's multiple areas where democratization needs to step in. And for me, the first question to you, Dr. Sikka, is AI kiska hai? Who owns AI?
Well, we own AI, of course. It is.
When we say we, you'll have to hold back. When we say we, is the humanity race or is it we Indians?
That's a great question. Let me put it like this. What is it? I think we have to start with what is AI. Large language models are, in a sense, a compression of a large amount of knowledge. A large amount of human knowledge gets stored in some way, we know that it is compressed because the size of the models, even though they are enormous models, it is much smaller than the size of the data, of the knowledge of the data. We also know that it is approximate because they don't give exactly the answers that were inside the data, but some way of approximation, sometimes with hallucinations. And so it is what we have built, what collectively society has built, is a very powerful technology that is able to compress a vast amount of knowledge, and it is able to regurgitate that in a very conversational way. You can have a authentic conversation in Gujarati or in Bengali or in English or French or whatever. And so the question is, whose data is that? Obviously, companies like yourselves are worried about, copyrights and things like that. Every time we engage with AI and we give it a piece of our lives, we are sharing a bit of us into the AI. And so in a sense, it is a collective compression of the world's knowledge. So it, in some sense, belongs to all of us. And yet it, of course, belongs to a handful of frontier labs and so on.
So is it a blockchain kind of ledger method where everyone has contributed to it, so everyone owns a part of it?
People are working on that, on decentralized AI and various other forms of new techniques. But the popular techniques that we have today are basically these large models, which are compressions of a vast amount of information. So, you were talking about 75 years of democracy. One, we have to create a vast amount of literacy with AI in India, so that a very large number of people, more than 1 billion people, are able to leverage this technology and are able to thrive because of this technology. And the question comes, how will we do that when we don't even have access to the large language models and things like that? And I think that I went back to, somebody asked me this earlier today, and I went back to the Green Revolution. One of my earliest memories is I was probably 2 years old when the war, that created Bangladesh happened. 2 or maybe 3, something like this. And I have this memory of my parents. They were very worried about, there was a ship that was bringing some wheat from the United States, and that ship was not being allowed to come to shore because of the ceasefire agreement. And so they were waiting for the ceasefire to happen so that the ship would then come into the shore and we would get wheat. And my parents were genuinely worried whether we will have food to eat or not. From that time, and I remember when I was 19, I went to the United States. On the flight, the Air India flight to New York, the butter and the cheese used to be from like New Zealand or Holland, places like that. Within 3 or 4 years after that, you would get Amul butter or Vijaya butter from the south and so on. So how did that happen? Basically within 1 generation in my parents' lifetime, we went from this point where a ship literally carrying gehu was, our ability to eat was dependent on whether the ship was going to come to shore or not, to the time where we became the largest exporter of
Supplier of butter.
Of butter and wheat and all this. We are also one of the largest suppliers of wheat now.
Yeah.
So how can that happen? And that, if you look back at the Green Revolution and how we managed to produce farmers who can create these kinds of crops and create self-sufficiency. So if we can do that, you better believe we can bring 1 billion people into the world of AI. So it can be done. The question is, are we able to see the goals in the same way that we saw back then, and are we able to set these goals? And I think that when you look at what the government is doing, it is really inspiring. The goals that we have set, arguably we are the leading country from the point of view of government's involvement in AI. No other government seems to me to be as far ahead on AI as our government is.
This summit is a testimony to that.
The summit, it's such a vast scale at which we are celebrating AI that it is really impressive. So I feel very hopeful that we can create a very large democratized culture where AI empowers people.
I guess Dr. Sikka's message is, आपने हमारा मक्खन खाया, अब थोड़ा AI चख के देख लीजिए.
No, I think that's a great point, and I think we have very clearly seen that people who use AI can do amazing things. People who use AI, people who understand AI and its limitations and its capabilities and build things with it are able to do extraordinary things. And can we, my company works in this area, Vandana's company works in this area, a couple of the colleagues are here. She has built this app where you can have people who can share their knowledge augmented by AI and share that with other people in a very authentic way. So I feel very hopeful.
Right. Small, information. His company is YNI. It's Vishal, Vandana, his wife, and his son also, Varun. So it's like triple V on acceleration. We talked about democratization of AI. It starts with compute power. Is there a shortcut method instead of having guzzling data centers with energy, water, so much of energy requirement or infrastructure requirement? Can AI solve for energy requirement of its own, or for its own?
It's a tool. It is like would you ask a hammer, hey man, can you solve your own energy problem? I think that we have to look at it in two different ways. One way is the situation today. The situation today is AI is incredibly power hungry. ChatGPT, the original GPT-3 based ChatGPT took something like 1.3 gigawatt hours of training. So it is a really massive amount of compute, and our government has been working to procure resources. So far, I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 60,000 GPUs that we have. By the end of this year, our goal is to get to 200,000 GPUs, that is wonderful. Of course, at the same time, OpenAI alone last year had 1 million GPUs. And so it is a very difficult situation, and I think we have to fight and we have to get it, and which the government is doing better than pretty much anybody else. And so we have to bring access to this. We have to bring these resources and make them available to startups, to people, to schools, things like that. But at the same time, I was yesterday, there is a gentleman who has been assigned by the organizers to accompany me to different places. And this poor guy was walking so much, he walked 32,000 steps yesterday. And I asked him towards the evening, when he was so tired, I said, how much have you eaten? And he said he ate 2 burgers the whole day. And that was, 2 burgers is about 30 watts of power. So when we operate on 2,000 calories in a day, that's like 100 watts, like one of these light bulbs. And out of that, our brain is taking up 20 watts. So 20 watts, your phone, you have this 4-camera phone. When this phone is in sleep mode, that is 20 watts is less than what this phone is consuming. So that's how our brain is working. Our perception, what I am speaking to you, moving our hands around like this is all in basically
multisensorial processing.
Yeah. So the second way to look at it is that, we have 200,000 GPUs and it is too less and all that, but why don't we invent the next generation of AI, which is much more power efficient? When we know it is possible, just look at yourself.
Right. One last question on talent. The question is democratization of talent pool when it comes to AI. People in India are worried that should all the LLM foundational model come from there, should all the talent go there? We've had enough brain drain from here to US. Now, of course, thanks to Trump, many of our brains are wanting to be here. But, the democratization of talent, because we have huge set of GCCs today here. Some fear displacement. But I remember watching your interview 2 days ago to someone, I don't want to name the brand, but you had a very different thought of why you bothered about AI displacing talent. What about AI creating many more opportunities for this very talent to take up a new job?
Yes.
Can you help us understand what you meant there?
So, whenever new media come, we cannot think of the new applications that are possible because of the new media. So some of you in the room are old enough to remember when television first came, and we used to literally have people who would, read from a piece of paper sitting on television. What is the point of the television if you are going to watch a, picture of a newsreader with a piece of paper in their hand, literally read the thing to you? You can put a picture of a person on a radio and then it is basically the same thing. But until the live events and watching cricket matches or conferences or having or MTV or when these things happen, then you realize, oh wow, this is all the stuff that TV can do. Or similarly on the phone, that it is not just that you can have the same thing that you had in your computer now you can have in your phone, but you can actually call a cab and you can get someone to, for God's sake, bring chana bhatura in 10 minutes and
or deliver an emergency mobile van, for hospitals,
So right now we are in a stage where we are all so panicked about what is AI going to do with all the stuff I was going to do yesterday, and this kind of work that we have been doing so far, that we are not able to see the new applications that are possible because of this. And those applications are starting to emerge. We got a glimpse of that with this open cloud drama that happened last week. Wow, you can have agent swarms who are talking to each other and creating religions and things like this. So people are beginning to wake up to the fact that there are things that can be, in my work, I had one of my customers is in the Middle East, a distribution company. They distribute things from big brands, CPG companies. And one of the CPG companies decided to shut down their factory in one of the countries there. I won't name the country. And this customer was telling me that they could use our software to do analysis. And then as a result of that analysis, they decided to shut down their operations in this country. In 1 or 2 days of analysis, where questions, you would ask complicated questions, like what happens if the price of this goes up and that goes up here. And so I asked him, how long would it have taken you to do this otherwise? He said, maybe a year. Because you wait for the first quarter and you say, oh, things are going bad in this country. Why is that? Oh, this factory shut down. And the second quarter, it did not recover. You put some emergency measure in third quarter because you're constantly looking backwards. Instead of 1 year worth of work by expensive consultants, in a few minutes, you can do an analysis and take a unbelievably complex decision like shutting down your operations in a whole country. So there are applications, wondrous applications that are possible. We just don't see them yet. And I think that this idea that, oh my God, arey sir, mera 20 saal ka kaam disrupt ho jayega, that is a very backward
But
way
that
of
happened,
looking at
right?
things.
So pre-cloud, there were fears and that everything will be on cloud. We'll lose data sovereignty, security.
Yeah.
We found ways.
And believe me, there is no doubt it is disruptive to stuff that we did. We have seen examples of software development happening 20 times, 50 times more productively than we did before. But don't focus on what is it that it takes away, focus on what is possible with this.
Possible tomorrow. That's a great note. You talked about television guys holding a paper. I have a screen in front of me telling me 6 minutes to go for my next panel. I'm really sorry, Dr. Sikka. I'll have to end,
Awesome
but thank
to
you
see you
so
there.
much.
And you have my dear friend Anshu here, to see. I'll see you next week.
From Dr. Sikka and me, a standing ovation to both of you, all of you who are waiting for all us. Thank you so much. Thanks.
We are all set for the second panel, and thank you so much. You have all been a lovely audience. Guys, you can stay seated. On the second panel today, we are talking about AI for many, not the few, bridging gaps in skills, data access, tech infrastructure, and capital flows. We have with ourselves Mr. Mustafa Furniturewala, CTO of Coursera, Anshu Sharma ji, co-founder and CEO of Skyflow, Mr. Hari Shetty, Chief Strategist and Technology Officer at Wipro. And to moderate the session, our very own Mr. Deepak Ajwani, ET Online Editor. Deepak sir.
Okay. First of all, apologies. We have very, very short time. But apologies also to the next section because I'm going to steal 5 minutes from the next session. So the warning to them, if you could convey, because we lost a bit of time. It's unfair on the guests that who've been waiting here. But this is an AI democratization session. If we could stick to time and take 1 minute only for the answer, not ramble, but be clear and direct, right? When it comes to democratization of AI, the first thing is compute power. Today, a lot of compute power has been resting in the Western geographies, while Google and various other companies have committed $67.5 billion to come to India. Do you think this will tilt the balance when it comes to compute power for AI in India?
Yeah, I think I feel like the compute power balance will democratize over time. I think it will spread over time. So I do think what's more important is how AI is having an impact. And we can see that by how it's scaling education, for example. And that is happening across the world. Even if you take India, for example, the highest number of generative AI enrollments are coming from India. And the access to education via AI is improving because of that, and it's democratizing all over the world by by the fact that the AI is enabling people to access the same content in different languages, and then also having support as well. So, for example, we have something called Coach, where every learner can have a 1:1 personalized tutor, and so that will, I think, tilt the balance across the country in terms of compute power as well.
Right. Question for you. India has a huge database contribution to the world. We have multiple languages. We have enough data to feed the AI models. Should we have a copyright model where we say if we are contributing, say, 10 million tokens, then you owe it to us that we need to have a pie in that AI for ourselves? Do you think that is something that one can work on tech front, or should there be a policy around it? Because India is going to contribute both talent as well as Indic models and language, English language content to the entire AI LLMs.
See, first and foremost, Deepak, I thought you'll ask a rapid fire for all of us, given the amount of time we got.
It seems we are on a rapid fire, and I'm really sorry for this, but
That's fine, that's fine. So coming back to your question, I would say what Mr. Sikka talked about. AI is a method of abstracting real knowledge into a model, and different sizes of model fit different needs. So at some point in time, while today data is the most important thing for building models, at some point in time models will take over the role of data, because you have already captured the juice out of the data into the models. So again, coming back, the ownership of data is very, very important for the next short time period, before which the ownership of the model becomes more important.
Right. Ashu, question for you, open source versus closed AI. While open source, lowers the barrier to entry, but does it still leave a loophole? I mean, you work in the cybersecurity area. Do you think open source still has to give an assurance to large corporates that, hey, don't worry, your data is impregnable?
So it's like your first question to Vishal, who's we? In your question, who is they? Right? So when you say open source should give a commitment, kaun karega, right? You don't know who's creating this, right? So open source by definition means anybody can contribute, which means there is no they. So you cannot, even if everybody agreed, there's no mechanism for that. So I think the way to make all of this work is going to be at the layer at which you're actually using these systems. There's literally no way for me to make sure, whether it's, by the way, open source or closed source, right? How do you get Anthropic or Mistral to tell you that the data they have about, Economic Times is actually scraped from Economic Times? Maybe they picked it up from a competitor, right?
I can tell you lots of other sites are scraping from ET, but
exactly my
good
point.
luck to them.
Exactly my point. So all this scraping is uncontrolled. So it's sort of like the way this whole thing works is the models themselves don't know when it's scraping something, how much of that is going to end up in the model, right? Khichdi. This is like khichdi ki khichdi ki khichdi, right? So if you think about neural networks, it's basically layers of khichdi. And by the time it comes to you to eat, there is literally no way for you to actually figure out where this came from, right? So what are we going to do? What we have to do as enterprises or consumers is we have to do enforcement of policy, data, privacy, security at the time of use. That's the only way we can make all of this work. And we've done this before. Frankly, like even in the database world, you don't really control. You have to do all of this work at the time of use, and that's going to be the case here.
Coming to you, this is about democratization of talent. While everyone's worried about frontier models being, baked in the valley, we have our own problems to solve. There are tier 1 cities, Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, and then there are tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. Talent does not need to be bound to a geography. how does one democratize the access to AI tools so that the talent base across the nation is able to build frontier models if required?
Yeah, I think first is just making sure everyone has access to the tools. But I think more importantly, it's going to be important that they are trained well to use those tools really well, right? And for that, I think...
So not just access, train them first to use.
Yes,
Right.
because that will help the talent be successful. And that training needs to be function specific, right? So every function needs a very specific training on how to use. There's some basic training which is AI fluency, but then every function needs to have a skills track on, like, for my function, for my role, what are the skills that I need to learn? And then it's also important to be able to verify those skills so that you have a feedback loop of skills verification and skills training.
Right. On governance and power control, we are at India AI Summit. The government of India is putting huge amount of effort to build awareness, get people to talk to each other across different geographies, even different countries are here. You think the government has a role to play when it comes to power concentration on who controls AI?
See, at some
Don't fear, this is off the record if you want.
it's a fair question, and let me try to answer it. The point that I would say is, anytime there's scarcity, there's always an element of governance that has to step in, and governments do step in to actually try to make this a fair process for everyone. Now, coming to the second element of it, in terms of the policy framework, a policy framework that actually focuses on basically reducing friction in AI is more important than a compliance check from a policy perspective, right? That's what I would broadly call it out.
Great. I love this panel. They're quick, they're short, they're brief. Thank you for sticking up. It says time's up, but it's not up for me as yet. One last question to you, Ashu. Data ownership and value creation. We contribute to a large extent across AI data stacks. When it comes to putting a value to it, is there a method that you attribute to it? You create your own solutions on cybersecurity. Is there a tokenization method or any other method of value attribution to what you create, what is your IP? Because any random kid with an AI tool or a bot will come and possibly steal your own IP. How does one attribute value to it?
Sure. So, we are obviously in the business of protecting enterprise data in the context of AI. But let me answer your question not in just the Skyflow context, but actually in the context you asked broadly. So, you studied economics?
No. I studied journalism and chemistry.
Okay, theek hai fir. Let me give you an economics lecture. So, do you know about this Nobel Prize that went to these people on the economy of ideas? Basically, here's what happened. These guys... Oh, yaar, baith ja tu.
Thandarak, as they say in Delhi.
Thandarak, putter. So, this is very interesting, huh? So, basically, what they proved, these people, ki think of any intellectual property you create, the people who actually create it actually get almost no value out of it. Okay, let me give you an example. Vishal, who's a friend, he was talking about this green thing. I don't know how many of people know here, but the Green Revolution was initially started by one doctor in the US who created a genetically modified version of wheat and rice. Now, 0 people in America are eating that wheat or rice, but people in Vietnam and India and China are actually eating a lot. So you have to think about AI the same way. Actually, that's how all technology works. Jo jitna use karega, utna value aayegi, right? So the value is captured not by the creator, but the value is actually captured by the people who are using it. So if I have an iPhone, you have an iPhone, and you're just watching TikTok and I'm creating a new startup, I've captured value. So in a way, it's actually very democratic. Everybody's going to more or less get access to the same models. Okay, somebody's going to have one version higher, one version lower. But the beauty of this whole thing is it's kind of like rice and wheat. The person who knows how to cook with it the best is going to derive value. So we shouldn't obsess about mere data say this guy created a model, so how do I get 25 cents back? India with its billion people, if all billion people start using AI on their phones to just do basic things like when you fall sick, ask it. If you're running a small business, find out what should your price be. you can extract the value with 1 billion devices in our phones way more than the 20 million people living in Australia or UK can. So it's actually entirely in our hands to extract all the value of the models.
Right. You talked of rapid fire. Final round, rapid fire. One word or one line at best. How much time you think will India take to create its own native frontier LLM?
I think it'll take a year.
It'll take a year?
Yeah.
Your guess, if you want to take the same question?
Depends on India's mindset. It can be now or it can be a year.
Mindset तो यार यहाँ से होता है ना और ये तो और fast चल रहा है like Vishal said, brains, multiple brains. All right. Your answer?
Well, I'm good friends with the Vivek Raghavan and all these Sarvam people. So why would we start with zero when we can distill the models that other people are producing? Same thing. Unhone gehu ugai hai. We're going to create the filtered version of it, suji. Sarvam is our suji and someone is going to make halwa here.
Great. We have halwa puri for lunch today. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and sorry to the next session if at all we stole something from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, friend on LinkedIn and just आपके जो post शशांक तिवारी I met Neeraj as well. तो आपने डेवलपमेंट किया कि हाउ वी यूज्ड टू उसको पैसे अच्छा आई ऑफ बट $1 billion